deconstruct the core engine of wealth creation in the modern economy. Let's begin.
You know, in our modern economy, we're taught to praise productivity. It's held up as the engine of growth, the key metric of efficiency, and the ultimate measure of our work. But here's the thing. Productivity is not what determines who becomes wealthy. And that's a fundamental misunderstanding, really, at the very heart of our economic story.
Ownership does. And that single distinction is the primary driver of the massive economic divergence we're all seeing unfold.
All right, so to really unpack this, we first need to break down the very terms we're using. There's this common narrative that hard work and wealth accumulation are the same thing, but structurally, they operate in completely different ways. So here's the core distinction. Income is a flow, while wealth is a stock. Think of income like water from a faucet. It requires your constant effort to keep it running. You stop working, the flow stops. Wealth, on the other hand, that's the reservoir. It's a stock of assets that can grow on its own, completely independent of your day-to-day labor. And this gets at the fundamental mechanical difference. Labor gets paid for its contribution, and that growth is linear. I mean, you can only work so many hours in a day. Capital, or ownership, is totally different. It's a claim on future profits, and its growth is nonlinear. A single dollar invested can double, then double again, all without any additional time from you. So how does this nonlinear scaling actually work? Let's dive into the core mathematical engine to see how this really builds. The whole thing is captured perfectly in the economist Thomas Piketty's famous formula, R is greater than G. What this means is that the rate of return on capital, that's R, systematically grows faster than the growth rate of the overall economy, which includes wages, that's G. When capital grows faster than the economy itself, existing wealth just concentrates and compounds, creating this powerful, self-reinforcing loop for owners. In this chart, this shows you what that formula looks like in the real world. Over the last 4 decades, real median wages have gone up by a pretty modest 17%. In that exact same period, the S&P 500, which is a decent proxy for owning capital, it grew by over 3,000%. This isn't a gap in effort. It's a structural, mathematical gap. The velocity of capital is just in a different league than the velocity of labor. This mathematical reality has a direct impact on the financial lives of every household. So what do people actually own? And how does that position them to benefit from compounding? Well, for the bottom 50% of households, wealth is primarily tied up in their home and consumer durables like a car. And while a home is an asset, it is not a productive, scalable one. It's where you live. Its primary function is consumption and shelter, not rapid capital growth. Now, contrast that with the portfolio of the top 0.1%. Their wealth is overwhelmingly concentrated in corporate equities and private businesses. These are productive assets. They represent a direct claim on the profits and growth generated by the economy. This is the ownership layer that directly benefits from that RT greater than RG dynamic we were just talking about. Okay, now let's introduce a powerful new accelerant into this existing structure, artificial intelligence. Now, AI doesn't change the fundamental rules of this game, but it dramatically amplifies the speed at which it's played. Businesses implementing AI are already seeing productivity jump by 20 to 35%. This technology makes firms dramatically more efficient and scalable, which increases the total output. So, where does all that increased output go? It gets captured in the profit margins. By reducing the marginal cost of labor, AI can push operating margins for some businesses into the 60 to 80% range. And that surplus value, that massive increase in profit, flows directly to the owners of the capital, the shareholders. The result is significant economic growth. Projections show AI could contribute an additional 1.5% to US GDP. But because this growth is driven by capital efficiency, not labor expansion, the financial gains are captured disproportionately by equity holders, the owners of the machines. You know, beyond the pure financial return, ownership gives you something just as valuable, structural security. And this is about more than money. It's about control and stability. Take a look at the very top of the economic ladder. In the early 90s, the majority of a CEO's compensation came from their salary. That's an income flow. Today, that is completely inverted. Over 80% of their compensation is now in the form of equity and incentives, an ownership claim. They aren't just paid for their labor, they're paid as owners. And this is the ultimate positional advantage. Wealth from ownership decouples you from the need to constantly sell your time for income. It gives you strategic patience,
It gives you control. It's the ability to make long-term decisions without the immediate pressure of next month's bills, and that is a luxury that someone solely dependent on income can rarely afford.
So, let's synthesize all this. We've defined the terms, we've examined the math, and we've seen how it all plays out, both in portfolios and in the broader economy. It comes down to this: wealth compounds because ownership scales. It is a system of nonlinear returns that rewards capital claims over labor contributions. Productivity increases the size of the economic pie, absolutely, but it's ownership that dictates how the slices are divided. It is the mechanism of capture. And artificial intelligence, which is arguably the most powerful productivity tool ever created, acts as a massive accelerant for this entire dynamic, increasing the velocity of capital compounding. Therefore, the defining economic divide of our time is not a difference in effort or talent or productivity. It is, and will increasingly be, the structural chasm between labor and ownership.